Oh, hey.
Oh, good to see.
There you there you are. Yeah, people were asking like, "Well, where's the workshop? Where's the workshop?" We were like 1
Yeah.
minute late, but we're here. So welcome to another Workshop Wednesday, brought to you by School of Bookkeeping. If you're watching, where are you watching from? Just put it in the chat. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, we're also on Twitch. We're trying to get on LinkedIn. It's going to be all over the place soon enough. But we appreciate you joining us from here. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We appreciate you doing that. But today, you may notice we don't have a person wearing red anymore. Now we have people wearing orange, and so we are actually switching gears in our topics this week or the coming weeks, and we'll be having Travis joining us from Avalara. Travis, you want to kind of introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Travis Hussey. I am by title a sales executive here at Avalara, but I have to be very knowledgeable about multi-state sales and use tax compliance, sales and local tax, whatever you want to call it, right? So somewhat of an expert in the area, and I work specifically in our emerging small business space, right? So I work specifically with companies that are using QuickBooks as their accounting system or ERP, right? So that could be anything in the QuickBooks ecosystem. So that's where I live. And then, any other systems, it could be recurring billing, e-commerce. So that's a little bit about me and the space that I work in.
Right. So what we're hoping to do over the next couple of weeks is really talk about sales tax because, yay, we've already talked about that that payroll, that nebulous payroll thing from
Oh gosh.
from a business aspect, but really want to keep the things really fundamental here over the next few weeks, because Travis, I guess in your experience, sales tax is not something that you can just get away from, right?
When,
it's
yeah,
it's
it's
one of
not.
those things that if you do business, you're going to have to at least address it, right?
Right. Absolutely. Death and taxes, right?
Yeah.
Two things that are guaranteed in life, whether it's your
I
personal
and
income
I
tax, payroll tax, or sales tax. So
Right,
that's
and I
guaranteed.
loved. I went to I think it was Scaling New Heights. Avalara had one of those Day of the Dead
Day of the Dead. Yep. Yep.
Day of the Dead stickers. Gives you the whole idea of death and taxes, but the little tagline was, "Well, now you only have to worry about death
Yep. Yep.
because the
One less
taxes
thing.
part is taken care of."
One less thing, right? Yeah.
But I think in general, we really want to keep things fundamental, right? Because when we talk about sales tax, there's really three components when it comes to sales tax, and we'll kind of go through those in a little deeper dive each week when we have you back, Travis.
Yep.
I think in general, first thing we want to comes to sales tax is this concept of nexus. So,
Right.
can you tell us a little bit about what Nexus is when it
Yep.
comes to sales tax?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's a great question, and it's something that I talk about literally on every call that I'm on with every prospective client that wants to know, like, hey, how can you help us automate and streamline this process, right? And that's really the foundational aspect. That's where it starts. You have to understand as a business what your nexus footprint is, essentially what states you should be paying attention to, or where you have tax obligations as far as sales tax. So it's really just a fancy word meaning, as a business, you have a connection to a state and you are obligated to be registered and collecting and filing sales and use tax, right? So, specifically sales tax nexus. There's also income tax nexus, franchise, other tax types, right? But most commonly, we're talking about multi-state sales and use tax. So it's really just a fancy word meaning you have that connection to the state. You're obligated as the seller to collect. There's really two ways to trigger sales tax nexus. So the way I like to describe it, think about the old laws that have been around forever and the newer laws, right? So, because they're not really new anymore. So that's why I say newer.
Newish.
Newish, right? So the laws that have been around forever would be physical presence nexus, and those still apply today, right? So I have a lot of people that kind of overlook that now that we have this newer concept of economic nexus. But anyway, so physical presence nexus, it could mean you have a fixed place of business in a state, like a brick and mortar. It could mean you have payroll in a state. That means payroll of any kind. So remote employees will trigger nexus. Even if you have 1099 contractors, most states will look at that as you having a physical presence in their state. If you're warehousing product in the state, so that could mean, stored in your own warehouses, or maybe you do Amazon FBA. You have product being stored in FBA warehouses. So you have property sitting in their state. They look at that as a physical presence. And then we can get into all these other crazy things, like if you travel into states to do installs or attend a conference or trade show, click-through or cookies nexus, which is more, related to technology. And if you have marketing partners, things like that. So
yeah, that's not fundamentals.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm kind of getting off on a tangent there. Right?
It's really, and that's the thing with sales
tax.
tax is that it really is almost a slippery slope when it comes to, and I think Carrie and I can speak to this physical presence aspect with school bookkeeping, right?
Yep.
I mean, I'm physically located everywhere, right? But because I live in an RV, right? So, but my address for for all intents and purposes is Florida. So, I am making income from school bookkeeping in Florida, right? So, we had to broach that topic. Carrie's located in South Carolina, and our third partner is in California. So to that, to what you said about physical presence, we had to broach the topic of sales tax for those three states, because that's where we happen to physically be located, in this virtual company.
Yep.
Virtual does not make you escape sales tax, because then your customers, that's the other. Where are they? If you have and every state has different rules, so it is overwhelming to figure out Nexus.
So then let's talk about economic nexus. So that's I think the next thing that you're going to talk about. Not to cut off Carrie, but that's she segued very nicely.
That's a great segue. Yeah, and Carrie, you're exactly right. So now your nexus isn't necessarily up to you, right? It's based on where you have customers. So the other way to do it, the newer laws that were due to the South Dakota versus Wayfair Supreme Court case that happened 2018, summer of 2018, right? So this concept has been around for 4 years now, and it's completely changed the game for a lot of businesses, right? Because your customers dictate where you have nexus. So it is based on having an economic presence in the state. And what a state defines as economic presence, it depends on the state. Most commonly, it's $100,000 in sales or 200 separate transactions, and that's in a year. Some states are looking at a rolling 12 months. For the most part, it's in the current or previous calendar year. So if your sales are going over $100,000 in a year in a state, or 200 separate transactions or orders, they're looking at that as, hey, you have an economic presence in our state. We want a part of that revenue. So at that point, you would need to get registered for sales tax in those states as well and start collecting and filing.
Have you seen? No, go ahead. Okay.
I was going to say, what I think surprised me is being, in the accounting industry for so long. In my mind, I always thought, okay, product is the only thing sales taxable. Certainly not subscriptions, which is what School of Bookkeeping is. And to my surprise, that's not true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Good point, Carrie. I mean, that's probably, almost 50% of the companies that I speak with are more services, SaaS, subscriptions. There's definitely a tax requirement there as well, depending on the state. So, yeah.
And it gets, I mean, in our example, in our business example, of the 3 states, South Carolina is the one state where
Sure.
it's, what we happen to sell is taxable. So,
Thanks a lot,
um,
Carrie.
Yeah. Well, and
but
when you talk about transactions, this was something that sort of surprised me. I think Dan kind of figured out was if we sell the subscription monthly, that would be 12 transactions in a year. So it adds up those 200 really fast
Right.
versus 12 annual subscriptions, we wouldn't hit the 200.
Yeah, and I've
yeah,
done the
so
math on that before. I think that is it, maybe it's 17 users in a state. So if you do have that, yep. So if you do have that monthly recurring subscription service, or, maybe it's a SaaS model, if you have
Yeah.
17 customers in a state being billed monthly, that puts you over 200 transactions, right?
It would think, because your brain thinks I don't have 200 customers, but you have 17.
Yep, with that monthly billing model. Yeah, so it's they're looking at that, either the number or the volume of transactions. Most states, right? Some, for
yeah,
example, like California, Texas, they're higher. They're just a flat 500K in gross receipts. By the way, a lot of these states are looking at gross sales, so it doesn't matter if some of that 100K or 200 transactions was tax exempt, still counts towards the Nexus threshold, even though you're not collecting tax. So yeah, but for the most part, yeah, it's in line with that 100K in sales or 200 transactions. If you're doing more than that as a business, that state looks at that as having an economic presence. So.
Now, are you have you seen in the past couple of years with COVID and everyone like thinking of I gotta be able to, like yesterday's conversation of I need to sell some stuff online. Has that kind of accelerated over the last couple of years from your
Oh,
perspective?
absolutely. Yeah, we've seen a huge spike in e-commerce across the board. Yeah, ever since the pandemic, there's a lot of new e-commerce companies popping up. There's a lot of businesses that traditionally haven't sold e-commerce. Maybe they were a strict, distribution B2B, and now, hey, they're opening up a direct to consumer e-commerce channel, or they're just opening up that e-commerce to grab more of the market share, things like that. So there's a ton of companies that are moving more online e-commerce, and definitely COVID has accelerated that. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Now, when it comes down to sales tax, now that we've kind of broached this topic of you know Nexus, like as far as the business is concerned, the taxability or whether or not something is taxed or what it's taxed really boils down to kind of three concepts, and we'll kind of dive into each one of these in future weeks. But it's who do I sell it to, what do I sell, and where did I sell it, right?
Yep.
Would you agree that that's in general when it comes to sales tax? What are those three things are going to be like a matrix of taxability when it
Yep.
when it comes to that, right?
Yeah, and that, Dan, that's, so not to get into some of Avalara and what we do, but that's part of our tax determination process, right? Like if someone is using our software connected with QuickBooks, it's going through that tax determination process of, okay, do I have Nexus in this state? So where do I sell? What do I sell? Meaning that product or service, is it taxable in the state or is it exempt? And then probably even before that, who am I selling it to? Is this customer taxable or exempt? Right. So that's a great point. So that's kind of the three things you need to determine. Like, do I even have Nexus in this state? Should I be worried about collecting tax, or if this is a taxable or exempt sale? And then, hey, B, is this customer taxable? Is it direct to consumer? Or are they exempt for whatever reason? Am I selling for resale? Are they nonprofit, government, religious, what have you? And then, what am I selling? If answers to questions A and B are yes, meaning, hey, I have Nexus in the state, this is a taxable customer, then are those goods that I'm selling taxable? So is it just tangible goods that are taxable everywhere? Is it something that has varying taxability, like clothing, software, subscriptions, things like that, right? So then the last question is, hey, is the actual product or service I sell taxable or exempt?
And then to further complicate things, like some states will have a fourth, a sometimes Y. That's the vowel, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
when did you buy this, right? So like New York, for example, has back to school sales tax holidays on clothing up to a certain threshold. I mean, it gets really super complicated
Yep.
when you and who has the burden of knowing all that stuff? Not say they're not with Avalara, right? But who
Yeah.
has the burden to know all the wherefores and what's up, as far as sales tax compliance.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, ultimately that's on the seller, right? Because I mean, in a sales tax audit, the whole like, hey, I didn't know, that's that excuse doesn't
Doesn't
really get
fly
you
too
any.
well.
Yeah, you still owe it, right? It's very black and white,
Yeah.
when Mr. Auditor is in there. So
Ignorance is still not a viable excuse, right? I
right,
mean,
exactly.
one of my favorite stories is I had a friend, or I still have a friend that's still alive. Um, she worked at the Arizona Department of Revenue, and
Oh,
her every, like, you could set a clock to it. There would always be business owners would come in and do their sales tax remittance, and at least 5 of them would say, "I can't afford to pay sales tax." Like, wait a minute. That is not that's not what sales tax is. You're collecting it on behalf of the tax agency, not it's not revenue producing activities for you that's now an expense, right?
yep.
So we want to so that's like the other caveat of
Hmm.
sales tax. Now that I've gone through and I've collected sales tax, yes or no, or on these sales transactions, then I have to file
Yeah.
with the
But
various jurisdiction.
what if you didn't know to charge a sales tax? It's really hard to go back to the customer and say, I need $1.25 from Tiffany. So
Yeah,
sometimes you might eat it just to get through that first pain because you're getting the customer mad or you're going to get a penalty by not filing. So you've got to make a business decision. So that may be why they say it that way. I'm not trying to take up for it. It shouldn't be that way forever. Might just
right.
be an initial oops.
Yeah,
So
it's really tough to
no,
either go back to that point, go back and collect the tax, and after the fact, ask your customer, or nobody really wants to eat the tax either. So it's really
yeah, then it becomes an expense.
right.
If you
Yep.
didn't collect it and you have to eat it, then that becomes an expense to the business. Um, but tell us a little bit, just real high level. What is Avalara, and what do they do besides have a monopoly on the color orange?
Yep. Yep. Obviously, that's we're the orange theme here. The orange and everything we do. That's the happiest color, as they say. But so Avalara, we can be your one tax partner for anything transactional tax, multi-state sales and use tax, sales and local tax. So really anything professional services side. So determining Nexus registrations, things like that, you can leverage just as much or as little as you want to, right? And then we're a SaaS company as well. So we have a software offering that streamlines and automates the process for you on a go forward basis, really to take this off your plate, help you, gain efficiency on something that's not a revenue driving activity, right? And also reduce the risk of tax compliance. So really you can outsource it completely to Avalara if you want, all the way from, the accurate tax calculation, which would be Avatax, our tax engine that integrates with anything in the QuickBooks ecosystem, and then 1,200 plus other systems, whether it's your e-commerce, recurring billing, things like that, right? And then with that comes detailed tax specific reporting, Nexus tracking. That's all within our core product Avatax, and then we can automate it further. Returns filing, so completely turn that over to Avalara for filing and remitting the tax, exemption certificate management if you do have tax exempt sales. So at a high level, that's what it looks like as far as our compliance suite.
Yeah, and I think the best advantage of partnering or using something with like Avalara and Avatax is there's really and David Joseph talked a little bit about this from Davo, is that there's really no value to an accountant, bookkeeper, or the business owner to track all that stuff. I mean, it's once it's set up, or once it's done, the value of that. I mean, it's just busy work, really.
It's like, to me, it's like payroll. A lot of accountants used to manually do payroll. They still do. And that's why we did the payroll fundamentals for those that don't, so that they can learn that there's a better way to do it. Just, full service payroll with whatever company you're comfortable with. And this is how we feel about sales tax. Yeah, you can manually do this stuff, but when you're dealing with multi states and so forth, it gets to be a burden and not an income producing profitable consulting gig. Yes, in the beginning, in the initiation of getting it set up, you could be involved as much as or as little with Avalara to get it done right, but back away and let them do their magic once it's set up right.
Yeah, it's very set it and forget it. We partnered, teamed up with Avalara for School of Bookkeeping because we certainly don't want to be out of sales tax compliance. And as Travis explained, you can only say I didn't know so often before it makes a big problem, right? And so just kind of having that peace of mind that something is there for us, because what I like a lot about it is that it has a heat map of sales that are happening in different states, and will help us determine if we're getting close to that economic threshold for that state, because then you got to apply or register in that state and then file, right?
Yep.
Bob, who is watching from Facebook, he of course asks, "Do you have a WooCommerce integration?" Is that part of the 1200? I would assume it does, but didn't want to speak to you.
It absolutely is, Bob. Yeah. So WooCommerce, I would say, is one of our top e-commerce partners. So we have a pre-built integration for WooCommerce. I mean, if you think about any of the top e-commerce solutions out there, WooCommerce, Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, like all those things, we're going to have a pre-built integration for. And typically with those, it's just a plugin that you download. Obviously you want to have a conversation with someone like me to scope it out and talk about where you have Nexus and, the different solutions that you can leverage through us. But in short, yes, it's pre-built integration. We make that part really simple. Download the plugin, connect it to a system like WooCommerce. And from there, we're able to calculate accurately in real time in the shopping cart and give you that Nexus tracking, like Dan was just alluding to, detailed reporting, all that good stuff. So,
would you, since we're talking about Nexus, before I interrupt, Travis, while you're while Carrie's asking the next question, do you have a link or a resource from Avalara that would help people to determine whether they are Nexus, since we're talking about Nexus, having the Nexus conversation, if you want to throw that in the chat there, so that as well as your contact information, if you want to reach out to Travis.
I wanted to talk about Travis and the contact, so let me know when I can. That's what I was going to say. So to be transparent, I'm actually on the Avalara Council, and both CBG and School of Bookkeeping. I'm in both of those areas. But what I've learned in my many years of being working with Intuit, working with ADP and Avalara, is that these are large companies, and a lot of reasons that you choose to work with School of Bookkeeping, we can cut through the minutia around your chat support. We can help you get the answers you need. And we have secret weapons in our Intuit arsenal. We have secret weapons with Kate at ADP, and we also with Travis and Jamie at Avalara. So rather than calling 1-800-Avalara or 1-800-ADP and Intuit, you know that experience isn't always great. They can pass along the special discounts and the hand-holding and get you in with the right people if you get the right contacts. So these are secret weapons. Don't for those that are CBG partners, we actually have it tagged into your little landing page. If you're not, certainly reach out to these folks, because if you want the good Avalara experience, don't just call it, don't go straight to the website, because it'll be just like it is for you at, at these other large companies. So I'm really excited that we have Travis joining us in these series, because it's going to make a difference in your experience and helping your customer or even your own business. And who doesn't want the special discount? They can pass those along, and they change, like Intuit. So you have to catch them when you're ready.
And then talk a little bit about just a little bit, Travis, about like how long it would actually take to implement, something like Avalara or Avatax.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say most of the heavy lifting with us is during implementation, because to your point earlier, I mean, once you go live, it is set it and forget it, autopilot, whatever you want to call it. You may be logging into your dashboard once a month to look at the reporting and, check that against your GL and QuickBooks or what have you. Look at what we're about to file, right? But I would say on average, implementations are about 30 to 60 days, depending on what all you're leveraging with us. If you're using the full suite, it may go into 90 days, and or it could be shorter than that. A lot of that is driven by our customer and however much resources they want to throw at it, right? So if you want to put more time and effort into it, you can go live inside of 30 days. But I would say on average, we're seeing folks go live on, Avatax integrated with your accounting e-commerce platform inside of 30 days. And then, maybe another 30 days to go live on the filing piece, managed returns or exemption certificate management, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just speaking from my own experience, it's not. It's not as set it. It's not as just turn it on. They go through a process of testing, right? Like you want to test to make sure that these transactions are working properly, and then it's turning on, and then still there could be something from the live environment that doesn't work in the test environment. So we're still we've been implementing for a while, but it's all for good cause, right? And ultimately once we get to that finish line of the starting line, then it's all automated from there. So we appreciate all the good work that you do over there. And we appreciate you coming on the workshop to talk about this thing that people just don't want to talk about, but they have to, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So
appreciate you having me.
We appreciate you coming with your expertise, because as you know, we've hired you guys because it's not easy.
Nope. Hey, what we like to say is focus on doing what you do best and outsource the rest. So, you mentioned some of the payroll providers. When you think about sales tax, think about Avalara and Avatax. So,
right.
So we will see you next week on another Workshop Wednesday, where we'll dive into some of these components of sales tax as we go through this sales tax fundamentals workshop series. So have a great week, and we'll see you next time.